Hi everybody and hello everyone. In this video I will be sharing with you some of my art notes, and I did start this series last weekend and I will be continuing this series this weekend. And so what I did was I answered two questions, and that was, why is art important, and how does it relate to your own life? And that is a question for myself. And I brought up an example of a situation or a challenge that I've been facing, and how I can apply the knowledge that I've learned from school on the subject of art to my own life, and see how that goes in a video, just so that I am updating you guys on what I'm thinking and what I've learned, without just sort of sharing like pictures and videos. And so what I did was I posted those on my Instagram and TikTok, and I'll be doing it again for this weekend. But I will be trying to make a short video again like last weekend, but this will be one video, and I hope to maybe make one video a week on each weekend. So this is the second weekend, and so I will be continuing on the subject. So let's begin. And so the subject that I brought up was art, and I also brought up the subject of sex and what does it mean, because I found it challenging throughout my life to kind of define sex as what is the dictionary definition, for example. And as you know, I did speak about that already, and kind of going through what does it mean, like the word, and then talking about art and how when you start painting and start expressing yourself, it's almost like letting people see into your soul. So it can be challenging because maybe you don't see somebody as a significant other and they're just your friend and you're friends with them, and you might not be comfortable in sharing your artwork with that person because you feel like they're taking a peek into your soul, for example. So I will just be continuing on that subject, but I will be talking about artists' movements in the art history. And I'll be doing that because of the things that I noticed. Like, for example, and throughout history, there was a lot of different artist movements where different types of artists create masterpieces using a style of art. It usually would begin with their own style, but they would use the style of the movement to communicate and sort of support the movement, but sort of with their painting. And the different movements were Impressionism, Expressionism, Surrealism, and these different types, Pointillism, and these different types of styles of art. And I found that something like Expressionism, for example, is interesting because when you're an artist and you're thinking about painting a picture that would resemble something from the artist movement of Expressionism, you do think about what part of yourself are you willing to share on the page. And so throughout my life, I have struggled with relationships, and that is relationships of any kind. Like, for example, whether that's a family member, a pet, or a friend, or a significant other. I've always had issues with relationships. So sometimes sex to me doesn't really have a meaning, doesn't really mean something that it might mean to somebody who doesn't struggle with relationships. But art taught me a lot about what the mind might be occupied with, and about empathy of what somebody might feeling. So sometimes to me, sex might not mean the actual act of sex, like, for example, making a baby. As I mentioned last week, the things that I mentioned about what I think sex might have meant when I was learning about what sex is and how I feel about sex now. And really and truly, I think it's just my way of trying to understand relationships, really, and what matters to me in relationships. And I did learn that a lot of things that matter to me in relationships do rely on issues around, sharing how you feel about something. Like, let's say you have a problem and the problem's really difficult, like you're embarrassed about it or you're insecure about it, but you don't want to share it with everybody in your life. You might want to just share it with somebody important, and that doesn't have to be somebody you're dating. So like the artist, impressionists, expressionist movements, and the etc., these artists definitely try to make an impression and impress people. So it was a way to impress their audience about what they're trying to say with their art and how they want to say it, so that when people would see it, you could actually be able to, interpret it in a way of your own without actually having to go up to the artist and ask them how are they doing, for example. And that does happen, like sometimes you go through life and you don't really talk to anyone, and rarely is it that somebody asks you how you are. And so then sometimes for me, art is a way to communicate how I feel and what I am experiencing, and that's what I could see in certain things, like especially with expressionism. And how do you achieve expressionism? In order to achieve expressionism and impressionism, you have to come to the canvas with a sort of part of your mind that is willing to sort of reveal what's going on. It cannot just appear from sort of logical and robotic sort of ways. There needs to be a human emotional attachment that needs to reveal itself with the art and the picture you're painting, essentially. And I did compare sex to a picture, and I thought that's a very interesting way of seeing sex, because of the fact that it is subjective, I definitely think. And just like art is subjective to the artist and the audience seeing the art. So that's all I'm going to really talk about today. So I just thought I'd leave it there. And I am not going to go through the definitions of each artist movement, but these artist movements was meant to capture the attention of people in different ways, using different techniques. And learning about it does definitely make me think, do I like to impress the person that I possibly might be having, sex with or in a relationship with? That's very significant, a significant other. And yes, I do like to impress the other person, maybe with the way I paint or with some sort of something impressive. So sometimes some people have the complete opposite experience, where they don't want to impress the person that they're dating, and they want to be sort of as honest about the way they are and who they are. Whereas I was studying art very much made me think about what impression I make. It doesn't matter who it is to me, like if it's a pet even, what is their impression of me, and how do they feel about me, what are they thinking about me, what do they think of me, like these sort of things will always sort of play on my mind. And so art has helped me understand how I could apply that in a picture sense instead of maybe talking about it, because I can talk if I want to and I can get into a subject, but I have noticed that they don't really result into necessarily the best ending of the situation. So I decide to sometimes channel that through my art and not necessarily talk to the person that I'm in a relationship with, whether that's a friendship or not, about what's going on in my life, and maybe use it for something else in my art, for example. And that has helped, because you never know what someone else is going through, and that's something that I've learned from relationships. But yeah, so that is all I'm going to be talking about this weekend, and I will be ending the video there. I'm not going to be really expressing much more of that, but I might start talking about a new example next week. But for now, this is me continuing from last week, and that's sort of what has come to my mind after talking about things from last week, and what has it got to do with my studies and what I learned, and how, for example, artists like Vincent van Gogh, who loved to paint expressionist paintings, he left the audience to see his art in sort of the rawest form of him, and he wasn't holding back those things. So it always made me think about, what is somebody willing to share with you, and are they really, like, what are they sharing with you? Because how you can express yourself or impress somebody or share your thoughts and feelings does start to form while you study art, and it does start to kind of grow. And that's all I'm going to be sharing with you guys this weekend, and when it comes to my thoughts around life challenges as well as things that I've learned from art school. I hope you enjoyed listening and watching. Thank you very much. Goodbye.